Hi, I'm Rob. I'm the M3D Customer Service Manager, and today I'm going to walk you through properly unboxing your micro and getting it ready to connect to the computer. So, first, we're going to need our micro. The micro comes in a wonderful white package box which has a breakdown of the printer on the side as well as the technical specifications on the back, and you can check on the top or the sticker that is enlarged on the front to determine what color is in the box based on what you ordered. So, the first thing we're going to do is pop open the top of the box. Open it up, and the very first thing we will see on top is our connection and our power cables. We'll set the box to the side for a second and talk about these. You have a USB-A to USB-B connector. You'll need to keep this. This is what's going to connect the computer to the printer to transfer data during printing, and the printer needs to stay connected during the entire printing process. So we'll set that there. Next is the country-specific power supply that you're going to receive. The M3D micro printer needs to be used only with the power supply provided. Use of a third-party power supply can void the warranty and damage the printer, so only use the marked M3D power supply with your micro. So we'll set that to a side in a second, and when we go to connect to the computer, I'll have those already set up and plugged into their various outlets. So now let's get to the printer. So the printer just comes right up and out of the box in its wonderful bubble-wrapped cube, which we will set down in front of us and put the box to the side. We're going to save the box because the box is very useful if you ever need to transport the micro between facilities or from work to home or just over to a friend's house so that you can show them the micro. So we'll set this box aside for later use. Now, we have our cube here. It's nicely packaged to keep it from being damaged in any way, and the tape on it just peels right off, so there's no need for scissors. If you do need to get scissors, you need to be very, very careful. On the back here, you will see is the feed cable and the power cables that go up to the print head. If you're using scissors to open the package, be very careful not to nick or damage anything inside the packaging, especially this cable with those scissors. But, like I said, you shouldn't need them. It's the sounds of the tape peeling that we've all grown accustomed to in the holidays. So we'll peel the tape sections off, and once we get the side fully open, we can just slide the printer right out of the bubble wrap. And I'll explain why we want to do that in just a second. So let's just pull this out. And our bubble wrap we're going to set to the side and keep, because like I said, we'll use our box with the bubble wrap to transport the micro anytime we're changing locations, just to keep it safe in the best ways. So that we're going to set off to the side and keep. And this we're going to put in the trash. Next, we have the cosmetic fluff. This is to protect the sides and facings of the printer, so make sure it arrives aesthetically perfect for you and beautiful wherever you're going to set it up as your printing station. So the first piece is one piece of tape across the top. It comes off, we set the printer forward, we take this fluff, and again, into our trash can. Next, this one is taped on with this non-stick adhesive tape, so this shouldn't leave any residue on the printer. If any residue is left at all, a damp, warm paper towel rubbing over will pull that right off. There's no need for heavy solvents to remove any tape residue, though there shouldn't be very much. Okay, so we just pull that tape off, and that fluff comes off. We again move our printer forward, set this off into our trash can, and now we have the printer unwrapped. Now, we have a few more pieces of tape to remove and a few items to go over here. First is a small guide for using the print bed. This just shows you where you should put the pressure so that you can remove the print bed easily without causing any undue strain on the unit, and where the internal spools should locate on there, but we'll go over that more in the loading and unloading of filament. So we have a few more pieces of tape to remove. If you'll notice on the bottom of the printer, these are placed on, so with some non-stick tabs that you can just go ahead and pull right off. Be very gentle removing the tape so that you don't accidentally lose your grip and have your hand go into one of the gantries or into the print head, knocking anything askew. So this tape we can set aside, and we're going to put that in the trash in a moment as well. And then we're going to remove this large piece of tape, and as I pull it up, you'll notice there's two pieces of paper on this that say remove clips. I will show you those clips in a second, but we're not actually going to remove them just yet. So we're going to pop that tape up and off. It comes up over the top, and the print head is now free. Now this last piece of tape around the print head just easily peels right off and around, just like that. And then there are two foam blocks underneath the X rack that the print head sits on that just slide right out and can be removed. And now all this tape here can go right into the trash. Now, there's one other piece of information that you might have overlooked, just like I did. So we're going to go back into our box, underneath that bubble wrap we saved, and we're going to remember the manual. The manual is an illustrated and mostly text guide that is going to walk you through the various options and components of the Micro 3D printer, as well as everything that came in the box, where the power connections are. Everything we're going to be going over in these videos you can find referenced here in our manual. Very handy guide to have on, and it also has the web addresses of all our digital files and assets that are there for your assistance. So hang on to your manual. It has some good stuff that you can use, and please refer back to it with any questions you have, or you can contact us here at info@printm3d.com, and me and the team would be glad to assist you. So, as I mentioned, those gantry clips we have, they are located here and here, right here where the X and Y gantries meet, and they remove simply by being pushed up ever so slightly from the outside, and they'll just pop right out of position. You may have to wiggle it just a little bit, but not too much. They're not in there very tight. They're just there to hold that gantry in position. These you will also want to save, because if you ever decide to send your printer to a friend or bring it over to the house or travel with it on a plane and have to check it in luggage, these gantry clips are very useful for keeping your printer safe. So we're going to go ahead and put those gantry clips in the box, keep our box off to the side here where we need it, and now we have an unboxed micro, and we're going to get ready to connect it to the software. But first, let me guide you through how to do that. Welcome back. I'm now going to show you how to install the software. To receive your software version, go to printm3d.com/downloads, and you'll come to this screen that I'm showing you here. On this screen we have 3 different sections. 3D models over here is where we have links to all the major online libraries where you can find free designs to print on your micro, as well as some designs that we've designed in-house, and we're ever expanding that collection. Here you can download the manual that I showed you earlier in digital format in both English and Spanish. And here we have the software downloads, and right below, for easy and quick convenience, we have all 3 operating systems and their software version for Linux, Windows, and Mac. Now I'm doing this demonstration on a Windows machine using Windows 10, so I'm going to go ahead and click the download button for Windows, and in my downloads tab the file starts to download, and when it does I'm going to go ahead and click on it and open up this executable. And we're going to get to our licensing agreement here. This licensing agreement is a very basic terms of condition and sale, which you should go ahead and read through at your leisure. And I'll give you a moment now to pause the video and read through that. And now that we've come back and you all have read all the way through our licensing agreement and you understand our terms and policies, go ahead and click I accept the agreement and click Next. Now, I like to create a desktop icon, but that's up to you. You can decide to or not create a specific icon. I'm going to go ahead and click Next through that. And we're going to see the M3D software downloading and installing itself. And now that it's done, we're going to click Next and Finished, and it is located and opened. So we're going to go ahead and finish that. We're going to select Launch so it opens right up. And then I'll open that software fully, and we'll go over what you can expect to see inside. All right, so this is the M3D software. Now, you see on mine, I have STL files already on this computer, so they have already been populated and loaded here. But what you will see on these screens is as you load a model into our software, it'll be saved here with a quick shortcut for easy reference to pull it back up for repeated printing under our recent model section. Now, this is the internal display on a printer, but let's go back just a second before we get into that. You see here that the first printer you'll see displayed here is black. This will change based on the printer you connect and the color of that printer. You will also see that printer serial number listed here, and if you click through this screen, you will eventually see all the printers you connect if you connect more than one micro or eventually connect a pro. The Open Models section here will take you to your file storage area where you can open up additional STL files from your computer, and the 3D Ink button, which we'll go over shortly, is how you install and make changes to the filament profiles that you're going to be using for the various filaments to print. Over here we have the settings option and the help option. Clicking on this arrow will open up a web browser that will lead you to contacting our technical support or general support if you should need us at any point during the process. Search will allow you to search through the recent models, And this gear has several options that are available, but we'll come back here once the printer is connected so that they'll all be available to us. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to connect your micro now, and then we will go over the various options in the software. So now that we have the software installed and that we have the printer completely unboxed, now we need to connect the printer to the computer. So the very first thing we're going to do is have our printer set up wherever it is we're going to be operating it, and we have the software installed and open. Now I've already connected our M3D power supply to an outlet, and I've connected our USB-B side of the communications cable to the laptop. First, I'm going to take the M3D power supply, and remember, only use the M3D power supply, and I'm going to put it into the circular port in the back of the micro. I know that the power is on because the LED logo has now lit up on the front, and the micro is now powered. Now we're going to take our USB-A side and plug it into the square port, and then I want you to watch on the software screen what happens here. Let's go back so we can see. So we have our black printer here, and it says we're not connected. I'm going to go ahead and connect it via the USB. We hear the Windows chime. We're going to give it just a second. And you notice our screens have changed. Now, the very first screen that comes up is the verify the gantry clips have been removed. There may be one other screen you will see that simply states that the printer needs to have its firmware updated. Simply click OK. It will only take a second, and the software will do the rest, and your firmware will be completely updated, and your unit will be ready to go. Now, we see here that the micro needs to have its clips verified that they've been removed. Those are those white clips we removed in the unboxing video. It won't start the printer until it's made a check to make sure those are out of the way so no damage will be caused to the printer. So what it's going to do is it's going to cause the printer to move slightly forward and slightly back in order to check that those clips have been removed. So we're going to go ahead and click verify. If you click cancel, you won't be able to do anything with the printer until you go through this step. So we hit verify, and as you can see very, very slowly, the micro is taking a few steps forward, and then it's going to take a few steps back here in a minute as well. So just going to click forward, and now it's going to click back, and then it's going to let us know that it is checked and it has verified that the gantry clips have been removed. So we have verified that the gantry clips have been removed. You're all set to go. You're going to click OK, and as you notice, the printer has now changed to a blue to match the printer that we have. The serial number is available up in this box, and if we click on that serial number, the printer and its serial number is listed in our multi-printer option. So if we were to connect more than one, it would show up with the color of that printer and the serial number of that printer. So the micro is now connected and it's ready to have its filament loaded. If you give me just a second, I'm going to go grab a filament and I'll show you how to load via the external feed method. Welcome back. In this section, we're going to go over how to install the 3D filament into the printer so that you can begin your first print. We're going to be demonstrating the external feed method, since your manual will show you everything you need to know about the internal method. And there's not much to see about the internal method, since it comes from this underneath port here, where the spool just fits in nicely. And you'll use this for loading through this side port here, up through this black cable down into the print head, and that's how the internal filament gets to its destination. Now let's put our print bed back in, slide it forward just so it locks, but we're going to be demonstrating the external method. Now for the external methods, there's several things you can do with the spool outside of the machine. One, if you just set it on the table and let it run up over the side of the micro, this is perfectly acceptable for your first couple of prints and shouldn't cause any problems. Just make sure the filament is unwinding off the spool freely as it goes. Next, we have the 3D printable spool holders that we have available on our website. These clip right on to the micro and can be used to hold spools in a number of different locations. We recommend off to the side rather than front or back, since that can get in the way of this cable as it's moving around. Now, this one here was printed in the same color filament of deep shamrock that we're going to be loading today, and it's what I'm going to be printing in the next video so you can see how to make your own. This is available on our website, as I said, but it's not the only thing you can use. Some people simply use a dowel rod on top of 2 books or pieces of PVC, and if you check on Thingiverse and My Mini Factory and Yegi.com, you can find lots of different filament holders that people have designed for the micro specifically and in general. Alright, so the external method, first we're going to take our spool holder and clip it right it on. You'll be able to do the same once you've printed, or you can set it on the table or use any method you feel free. The important point is the filament should come off of the spool easily, or the spool should be able to rotate freely. Now, when we load this, there is a port right in the top, right there in front of the black cable assembly, and that is where our filament is going to go into for the loading of this procedure. But first, we have to go to the software. Now, in the software, up in the top left-hand corner, you're going to click on the 3D ink button, and the window is going to open here and tell you that it doesn't look like you have 3D ink loaded, which is true. Now, it has an option here to click if not correct. If clicking on this button, you'll be asked to confirm that there is 3D ink in your printer, yes or no. If we click yes, we'll be asked to enter the code of that filament, just like we would if we were going to load it. The code on Shamrock is pub. So we're not going to go this route because we don't have filament loaded, but this is how you would if the micro suddenly forgets that it has filament, which is a very rare occasion but can happen if you have to update the firmware or have had the micro disconnected with filament loaded for a long period of time. So we're going to go back to the main screen and click Insert Filament. You'll notice this gear icon as one last thing here, which doesn't do anything at this stage. We'll come back to that once we do have filament loaded, because that'll be important to us. So we're going to click Insert Filament. We're going to enter that code we talked about just a second ago, pub, and we're going to enter, and then we're going to select the external filament method. If you're using tough 3D ink, you'll only be able to select external because it's too flexible for it to work in the internal feed system. It's like trying to push a rope up a hill in a straight line. It's not going to happen. So the tough has to be on an external feed anyways, which is why we're describing it here, but PLA can go either way. We're just doing external for ease of demonstration. So I'm going to click on that. And we're going to get this notification here that to please wait while it moves the print head to the proper place and heats up the nozzle. So the print head in this particular case is already in the right location, but what you might see is your printer might go back on the Y and all the way over on the X before coming to center and then moving itself up to a certain height so that the ink that it's loading can print freely down so you can see it without getting close to the nozzle. So right now we wait for this progress bar to tell her the heater is going up. I'm going to go ahead and stick my filament right down in the middle. You'll feel it cut to a sudden stop. That's the extruder housing, stopping it from going any further. And until that gear starts turning to grab the filament, it's just going to stay there. So as soon as this heats up, the gear will start turning. I'll be able to feel the gear take possession of the filament from my fingers. It'll distinctly be pulling it down through my hand. At that point, I can let go and then take a look to make sure ink is extruded from the bottom. So take 1 second, and this will be heated up, and then we'll go ahead and load it through. If it takes more than a few seconds, don't worry. It takes each printer its own sort of time to heat up, but it shouldn't take more than a minute. And see, there you go, the progress bar is done. I can feel the gear pulling the filament down through my fingers, so at this point, I can just let go, take the printer, and let it go through its own operations. I'll tilt this up so you can see, and then in a moment, we're gonna see 3D ink extrude from the bottom of the nozzle here, and then our filament is loaded, and we're ready to go. So let's see, it's gonna come through, pulling a little bit down, a little more down, and there we start to see a little strand of filament right under here starting to print, and it makes this little ball here, and if you grab it, it'll come away and make this sort of spaghetti string filament, which is what happens when a print head is printing out filament above the print head. If you see strings like this occurring during your regular printing, that means you need to adjust your calibration so that the nozzle is lower to the bed. It may also mean you need to increase the heat on the filament, which is what I'm going to show you how to do next. So, has the new 3D ink exited the nozzle? If it hasn't yet, that's fine. You might not have gotten the gear to grab it entirely. Just go ahead and click no. The gear will start turning again, and you can try to refeed the filament in so that gear will catch it. All right, but in this case, we've got it loaded successfully, so we're going to click yes. It's going to tell us now that the nozzle may contain unwanted filament. Please remove any excess material from the nozzle. Be careful, the nozzle might be hot, and it will be hot, but this is the excess material it's talking about, the little spaghetti spiderweb strands that it forced out as it was loading. So we throw that in our trash can over there, and we're going to go ahead and click continue. And now we see the profile of our filament displayed. The color is deep shamrock. The material is PLA transparent 3D ink, one of my favorite materials actually. And the temperature it prints at is 215 degrees. You'll notice that for each type of filament, there's a pretty standard range of what they print out. For PLA on the micro, it's 215 degrees. But depending on the conditions you're in, say you're in a drafty location or the ambient air temperature is a little bit colder than the average room temperature of say 74, 75 degrees, then you'll want to adjust it slightly for your prints. Now you click that gear I told you didn't work before, now it does, and you get a warning. Changing the filament profiles can cause damage to your printer and are for advanced users only. What we mean by that is printing filaments too cold or too hot can either increase the likelihood of a severe clog in the nozzle, or it can cause the nozzle to be so hot that the filament runs like a goo and prints inaccurately or prints dangerously, or over a prolonged period of time could even cause burns in the print bed if it's too low and too hot at the same time. If that happens, contact technical support at helpdesk@printm3d.com as always, and the team will be there to help you if you need to get a replacement bed because something has been burned, or if there's a severe clog that you can't take care of. We have a repair service and a parts service to help you guys get back into on track and printing again. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and click OK to show you how to do this. And what we see here is the color is deep shamrock, the material is PLA, but the temperature is now a text box. In this, we can enter a temperature in Celsius that we want the printer to print at. Now, we recommend only increasing the temperature by 5-degree increments, possibly 10-degree increments for your first change if you notice something is very, very low heat to be where it needs to be. So if you see a model where none of the layers are sticking together, but the print continue to go through, that would be a time to maybe give it a 10-degree heat bump for your conditions so that those layers fuse together a lot better. But other than that, you really don't want to jump more than 15 degrees away from the original temperature that's set for the filament, because outside of that, you're sort of in unknown territory. If, no matter how you've changed the temperature, you're still having problems, contact us in technical support. We may need to bring the printer in for a replacement under warranty for a damaged heater. Possibly the computer is not communicating instructions well enough with the micro, and those are things our team can help you out with. We're always here to support you, and if there's any problems with the filament or if you have trouble with a third-party filament, you can contact us and we'll do our best to get you the suggestions you need. All right, so now we're going to get ready to make our first print. We're going to make our own spool holder, and I will see you for that. So now that we have our software installed, we have our 3D printer unboxed and connected, and we have the filament loaded, now is the time for our first print. So the first thing we're going to do is print our very own spool holder, just like this one, to clip onto your micro at home. So we have a spool holder that clips onto the micro available on our website. If you go back to where I showed you the 3D models section when we were installing the software, right in there under M3D models, you will find this spool holder right here. So we're going to load that up. And then what you see here is these two red planes that are about the micro here in the front and back. And they are showing that the print, as it loads in, is outside the bounds. Now, I have this loaded this way on purpose so that we can show you the different functions. Here in this box, we have what's called the scaling options. These scaling options allow you to change how the print is available on the bed. The top one allows for movement. So if I change the X or Y, it'll move where the print is based on its center around the print bed for where it's going to be printed. The next one is scale. By using these options, I can increase the size on any of the axes of this print. I can make it squatter, I can make it elongated, I can make it wider. And that's what these three are. This X here is what links them together so that they move in proportion. But if I was to undo that X and adjust one of those levels, it would just move along that axis. And then the very last one, which is the one we want, is the orientation. By changing these values off of 0, I can rotate the print around on the print bed to various angles for where I think it's more effective to print. Now here, we just want this to be a 0. So let's make that a 0 again, and it sets right back to it. Now if I go back up here, it'll settle itself, and then if I come back. But what we want to adjust is the Z rotation. So the Z, we need to turn it slightly on its side until we get it just where we need it to be so that those red bounding boxes go away. And I've gone a little too far that direction. And there. Now it is within the printable bounds, and we can select the print options. So the print options, once we have it here and all the red bounding boxes are away, we're going to come down and hit the green print button. The green print button opens up the printing options menu. Here we can select how thick the layers are going to be, how dense the print's going to be, as well as selecting other options that assist in successful printing on the M3D Micro, and we're going to go over each of those. So the first thing we're going to go over is print quality. Print quality is determined by how thin the layers are. The higher the quality, the thinner the layer. Now this isn't always necessary for every print. A spool holder does not need to be printed at 50 micron layers or expert quality to still be a beautiful print. It would simply make it take longer to print the same item in that case. But if you have a lot of details on the flat surfaces of the sides going up and down, the thinner the layers are there, the more resolved those details will come out and the more resolution they'll be printed with. Now, the printer is most accurate across the X and Y. So the most detailed part of a print with intricate designs should be printed with that part facing up for the best printing. But in this case, we don't have a lot of designs on there. It's simply a circular section on an arm with a nice corner. So we're going to select medium quality. There's no need to go up to very high quality. Medium quality will get us what we want in a reasonable amount of time. Now the next is infill. The very first one here is thin walls and it's hollow. So hollow thin walls is very good for a first test print to see if the printer is getting all the resolution or if there's a problem with your file. But overall that's going to be a very brittle print in the end. Hollow thick walls is for small sturdy prints that don't need a lot of infill to be in their density. This is a great way to print action figures quickly or things that aren't going to be used very much but mostly are for display. Now the rest of the infill settings will make the print more and more dense by creating a boxed mesh pattern inside the print that prints up as it goes, and the thinner and more intricate that pattern is, the more dense the print is and the stronger it will be. So things that are going to take a lot of abuse and damage should be printed all the way at extra high density, and then somewhere towards the middle you find where you want to go for strength, and it will take some experimentation and it'll really depend on what you're doing. If you contact us at info@printm3d.com, we can help you make those determinations. If you send us the file you're trying to print, we can tell you what we think about it. So we're going to select medium or fast infill in this section. So medium quality, medium infill, and that brings us down to our lower options here. We're going to start at the bottom with the two that are automatically checked. Verifying bed level. This should never be unchecked to ensure reliability. This means before the print starts, the micro will do a self-diagnostic to make sure that the print bed and where it thinks the print bed is are reconciled. So it's going to come down here and it's going to check the height by touching the bed several times with the nozzle and making sure it knows exactly where it's supposed to be. Unless you're in an extreme hurry, I recommend always leaving that on. Next is the enable skirt. Skirts are a single outline of filament that goes around the entirety of the print before it starts on the print itself. The reason for this is to take any of the filament that has been in the nozzle before the print started and use that up inside that skirt so that when the model starts printing, it's using only fresh, evenly heated filament in the print. Now, for larger prints, the skirt can sometimes make that model out of bounds. So in this case, we're going to disable it. But if the print is not on the edges of the bounds of the printing area already, you want to be able to go ahead and use that because it will cause a much more successful print and it will make sure that there's no errant first bits of unheated filament that were at the tip of the nozzle inside that print or on the first layer getting in the way of the nozzle as it goes around. Next, we have our 4 options that assist in printing. The first is the raft. You want to use a raft when you're not certain that that model is going to be stable enough to stay on the print bed as the print head is moving around above it, causing some force on that model itself. So if the base of the large model is very small, say, for example, just an action figure standing on 2 feet, but then he's bulky and has lots of clothing, or it's in an extreme balance pose, then you want to use a raft to center and hold onto that model and make sure it prints evenly and consistently going all the way through. It's just to help with bed adhesion. It's not normally needed for most large base prints, so in this case we won't be using it, but it is very useful if you have small, delicate prints that need to be held up. Now the one above that is wave bonding. Wave bonding is used to get an extra adhesion onto the print bed. What it does is as the nozzle goes along, we'll say my finger is the nozzle, it will dip slightly as it prints that first layer, creating a small extra pooling of filament that acts kind of like an anchoring pylon in the base. This is what you want to use if you've got a very tall but narrow print, and it will make sure that base adheres even more solidly going up, ensuring a stable and accurate print as you go. The next option we have in here is support material and model on model support, and they kind of go together. What support material does is, say for example you had a model that had its arms outstretched. you would want to turn on support material at that point, and it will print a mesh of material from the base up to the first layer of that overhang and then take over printing the model. This will prevent the arms from sagging down during printing or possibly having strings of filament that printed on nothing coming and causing sort of an arch below hand. Now, model on model does the same thing, but support material only goes up to the first overhang it encounters. Model on model will build a second set of overhang up to any overhangs above it, and it will all support itself. And then that wet mesh of filament is easy to remove afterwards with an X-Acto knife, mostly by hand. It will just simply peel away, and then you might need a small bit of sandpaper to smooth out the section where it contacted with the actual print. Support material and model-on-model support are very useful, but they are a use of filament, so if they're not needed and there's not any overhangs on it, the micro can handle angles up to 45 degrees and sometimes even a bit steeper without it. So it's good to experiment and see when you need it and when you don't, so that you're not wasting filament unnecessarily. All right, so with all those options clicked as we don't want the skirt, we do want to verify the bed level, we don't need support material for this particular print, and wave bonding and the raft aren't going to be necessary. Our print bed is clean, we have a removable print bed sheet that comes with it already on there. It's all set and ready to go. I have good conditions, my heat I'm pretty confident in as we go, so I'm going to go ahead and click print, and we're going to see what happens as it goes through. So we hit print, we're setting up. And as you can see, it's switched over. Once that countdown is finished, it comes up here and it's starting to calculate, and what it's doing now is it's turning this model into a series of G-code commands and then sending that onto the printer, which the printer then translates into its individual motions on the axes and begins setting up the print. So it'll tell us that the new job has started. Once it's all over there, it gives us a warning, do not unplug the micro, or it'll have to recalibrate before it can take on another job. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And it's going to start checking the height here in a second, and you'll see the print head go down. Once it's gone down and checked its height, it'll move back into this corner on the left and the right, set its positions, and then it'll begin the print, and you're ready to go. So at the end, let me take this off here. It won't affect the print any, just to set that down. What you're going to be looking for is a spool holder with nice, clean lines. You should see no gaps between the layers. It should be filled in on the top nicely. The base should be made of these continual lines, and there she goes. She's going all the way back on the Y, and now it's going to go all the way over on the X, and then it's going to come forward and center and start looking for its height. So as I was saying, we want to make sure that all the layers are evenly bonded and that there's no gaps in there. If you see that, that's a good indication that you need to turn the heat up a little bit on the filament, as I showed you before. Now, if you see lots of stringing between the filaments, sort of like a spider web hanging between the two, that's an indication that you're printing too hot and you should lower the temperature about 5 degrees. If you see any warping along the bottom, then you don't have a completely flat bottom. So what you want to check for is a smooth, flat bottom, and if any of the corners are warped up, you want to go to the calibration screens, and you'll find a nice little screen in there with a cat sitting in the middle of it, and that's going to be the bed offset screen. From there, you'll be able to adjust the corner where you see the warping. You'll be able to lower the nozzle down just a little bit, and that in that corner, and that should counteract all of the warping you see. Printing on rafts also helps reduce warping, so you may decide that a raft is needed for this, but generally it's not. So that's how your first print's going to get started. Your spool holder should come out like this. If this doesn't seem to be the spool holder you're receiving afterwards, again, any trouble, you can always contact us at helpdesk@printm3d.com. And if you have any general questions about modeling or maybe the best settings for something, please contact us at info@printm3d.com. Please enjoy your micro, have a wonderful year, and welcome to 2017 as the new makers and creators.